The crystal chandelier above the dining table cast sharp shadows across the white linen tablecloth, and I watched those shadows shift as I reached for my wine glass. My hand was steady. That's what I remember most about that moment, how steady my hand was, even as my entire world prepared to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Natasha and I have decided to open our marriage, Alexander said, his voice cutting through the polite dinner conversation like a blade through silk. The words hung in the air between the main course and dessert. His mother, Catherine, set down her fork with a delicate clink that seemed impossibly loud. His father, Thomas, stopped mid-chew. I sat perfectly still, the wine glass frozen halfway to my lips. I hadn't decided anything. This was the first I was hearing about any of this, and we were at his parents' house, surrounded by their expensive furniture and their expectations and their certainty that their son could do no wrong. The beef Wellington on my plate had gone cold. I could feel the texture of the linen napkin in my lap, could smell the roses Catherine had arranged in the centerpiece, could taste the beginning of something bitter in the back of my throat. "Excuse me?" Catherine's voice was thin, strained. She looked at me with something between pity and confusion, as though I should have prepared her for this announcement, as though I had any part in this decision that was being made about my life without my consent. Alexander smiled. He actually smiled like he'd just announced we were taking a vacation or remodeling the kitchen. His hand rested on the table, fingers drumming a casual rhythm against the wood. "It's very modern," he said. "Lots of couples are doing it now. It takes the pressure off, you know? Keeps things fresh." I set down the wine glass. My hand was still steady. "When did we decide this?" I asked. My voice came out calm, almost curious. I was proud of that voice. It didn't shake. It didn't rise. It simply asked a question that deserved an answer. Alexander looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. He hadn't expected me to question him in front of his parents. In the 3 years we'd been married, I'd learned to keep disagreements private, to present a united front, to smile and nod and be the perfect wife he needed me to be for his perfect life. "We've talked about it," he said, and that was a lie. We hadn't talked about anything. We barely talked at all anymore, except about his work or his schedule or which social events we needed to attend. "You know how things have been." I did know how things had been. I knew about the late nights at the office. I knew about the business trips that seemed to multiply. I knew about the way he'd stopped looking at me like he used to, stopped touching me unless there was an audience to perform for. I knew about the distance that had grown between us like a living thing, cold and vast. But I hadn't known about this. Thomas cleared his throat. "Perhaps this is a conversation better had in private," he suggested, his voice carrying that particular tone of disapproval that wealthy men use when they want to indicate that someone has broken an unspoken rule of etiquette. "No," I said, and I set my napkin beside my plate, folding it carefully, precisely. "I think this is perfect, actually. Since Alexander wanted to make this announcement publicly, I'll make mine the same way." Alexander's smile faltered. "Natasha, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I said, and I stood up. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "I'm being clear. If we're in an open marriage, then I'm single. Those mean the same thing to me." Catherine gasped. A small sound but full of shock. "You don't mean that," Alexander said, but there was something new in his voice now. Something like concern. Like maybe he was realizing that this wasn't going the way he'd planned. "I do mean it," I said. I looked at Catherine, at Thomas, at this family I'd tried so hard to fit into for 3 years. "Thank you for dinner. It was lovely." I walked out of that dining room with my head high and my spine straight. I walked through their enormous foyer with its marble floors and its paintings that cost more than most people made in a year. I walked out their front door and down their stone steps and across their circular driveway to my car. My hand shook when I tried to put the key in the ignition. That's when it all hit me. That's when the steadiness finally cracked and I sat in my car in the driveway of my in-laws' mansion and realized that my marriage had just ended over dinner, announced like it was a business merger or a stock acquisition. I drove to a hotel. Not home. I couldn't go home, not to the house I shared with Alexander, not to the bedroom where I'd slept beside him, not to the life that had just been exposed as a carefully constructed lie. I checked into a room and sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the generic art on the wall and wondered how I'd missed all the signs. My phone buzzed 30 minutes after I'd walked out of that dinner. I almost didn't look at it. I assumed it would be Alexander calling to tell me I'd embarrassed him, that I'd overreacted, that I needed to come back and apologize. But it wasn't Alexander. It was Gregory. Alexander's best friend since college. The best man at our wedding. The person who'd given a toast about loyalty and forever and the strength of true friendship. The message was simple. I need to talk to you. It's about Alexander. Meet me tomorrow morning. Coffee shop on Parker Street. 10 o'clock. Come alone. This is important. I stared at that message for a long time. Gregory had never texted me privately before. All our communication had been in group chats or through Alexander. This was strange. This was something new. I typed back, I'll be there. Then I lay back on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had just happened. Alexander had announced an open marriage without telling me first. He'd done it in front of his parents, in a place where he must have assumed I wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't object, would just smile and go along with whatever he wanted. He'd miscalculated. I thought about all the times over the past year when he'd come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. All the times he'd been distant, distracted. All the times I'd asked if something was wrong and he'd told me I was imagining things, that I was being insecure, that everything was fine. Nothing had been fine. I'd known that on some level. I'd felt it in the way he stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings, in the way he always had his phone face down on the table, in the way he'd started taking calls in other rooms, closing doors, speaking in low voices about things he said were just work, just business, just nothing I needed to worry about. But I'd wanted to believe him. I'd wanted to believe that we were just going through a rough patch, that all marriages had them, that we'd come out the other side stronger. How stupid I'd been. The hotel room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. I started writing down everything I could remember. Every late night. Every unexplained expense. Every time he'd accused me of being paranoid when I'd asked simple questions. I wrote until my hands cramped. I wrote until my eyes burned. I wrote until the words blurred together and I had to stop. Then I took a shower. A long, hot shower where I let myself cry for the first time since I'd walked out of that dinner. I cried for the marriage I'd thought I had. I cried for the future I'd planned. I cried for the version of myself who'd walked into that dining room thinking she was just having dinner with her in-laws. When I got out of the shower, my phone was buzzing again. This time it was Alexander. 20 missed calls. 15 text messages. I read through them. They started apologetic. I'm sorry, I should have talked to you first. Come home, we can discuss this. My parents are upset. Then they shifted. You're being unreasonable. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You're too emotional to have a rational conversation. And finally, fine. Stay wherever you are. We'll talk when you've calmed down. I blocked his number. Then I set my alarm for 8 o'clock and tried to sleep. I didn't manage much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alexander's face across that dinner table, saw the casual way he'd destroyed our marriage, saw the smile that said he'd expected me to just accept it. At 10 o'clock the next morning, I walked into the coffee shop on Parker Street. It was a small place, local, the kind of spot that served actual good coffee instead of the chain store stuff Alexander preferred. Gregory was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. His hair was messy. His shirt was wrinkled. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. I picked up one of the coffee cups. Your message made it sound urgent. It is, he said. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then slid it across the table to me. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I've been trying to figure out the right way to do this for months. I looked at the phone. At the photos on the screen. At Alexander with his arm around a woman I didn't know. At Alexander kissing that same woman outside a restaurant. At Alexander and that woman getting into a car together. The photos were dated. The most recent was from 2 days ago. The oldest was from 14 months ago. Her name is Simone, Gregory said quietly. They met at a business conference last year. He's been seeing her ever since. I scrolled through the photos. There were dozens of them. Alexander and Simone at restaurants, at hotels, at her apartment building. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Why are you showing me this? I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Hollow. Because you deserve to know the truth, Gregory said. And because what he did last night was unforgivable. He told me his plan. He said he was going to announce the open marriage thing so he could keep seeing Simone without having to hide it anymore. He thought you'd just accept it because you wouldn't want to cause problems with his family. You knew, I said. You knew and you didn't tell me. I know, Gregory said, and he looked genuinely miserable. I know and I'm sorry. I confronted him about it 6 months ago. He told me it wasn't serious, that he was going to end it. Then he didn't. And I kept thinking he would, that he'd come to his senses. But he didn't. And last night when he told me his plan, I realized he never would. So I had to tell you. I stared at the photos. At this woman, this Simone, who had been sleeping with my husband for over a year. She was beautiful. Blonde. Younger than me by maybe 5 years. She looked happy in these photos. Like she didn't know or didn't care that Alexander was married. There's more, Gregory said. I've been documenting everything. Bank statements showing withdrawals I think he's been using for her. Credit card charges at places you've never been. I got it all saved. I thought you might need it. He pulled out a folder. A thick folder. He set it on the table between us. Why? I asked. Why would you do this? He's your best friend. Because you're a good person, Gregory said simply. And what he's doing is wrong. I thought about just staying out of it. But then last night happened, and I realized that staying silent made me part of it. Made me complicit. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, printed text messages, more photos. It was a complete record of Alexander's betrayal, organized and documented. I can testify, Gregory said. In court if it comes to that. I'll tell them everything I know. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Gregory had always been kind to me. Polite. But distant in the way that friends of spouses often are. I'd never expected this from him. Thank you, I said. We sat there for a while longer. He told me more details. About how he'd discovered the affair by accident, seeing Alexander and Simone together when Alexander was supposed to be at a business meeting. About how he'd started following Alexander after that, documenting everything because some part of him knew it would matter eventually. When I finally left that coffee shop, I had the folder tucked under my arm and a clear understanding of what I needed to do next. I needed a lawyer. A good one. The best one I could find. Because Alexander had made a mistake. He'd assumed I would be too afraid of conflict, too worried about appearances, too concerned with keeping the peace to fight back. He'd forgotten who I was before I became his wife. Before I'd molded myself to fit into his world. It was time to remind him. The law office of Patricia Hammond occupied the 15th floor of a downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the entire city. I sat in the waiting room with Gregory's folder in my lap and tried not to think about how much this was going to cost. Patricia Hammond had a reputation. Everyone knew her name. She was the divorce attorney that powerful men feared and wronged wives sought out. Her success rate was legendary. Her retainer was astronomical. I'd called her office from the hotel room at 7 in the morning. Her secretary had told me she was booked solid for the next 2 months. I'd said I was willing to pay double her normal rate for an emergency consultation. There had been a pause, then the secretary had told me to come in at 11. Mrs. Sterling? A woman in a blue suit appeared in the doorway. Miss Hammond will see you now. I followed her down a hallway lined with abstract art and into a corner office where Patricia Hammond sat behind a massive desk. She was in her 50s, with silver hair cut short and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She didn't smile. She didn't offer pleasantries. She gestured to the chair across from her desk and waited for me to sit. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I started with the dinner table announcement and worked backward, describing the past year of distance and lies. Then I opened Gregory's folder and spread the contents across her desk. Patricia picked up each document, examined it and set it aside in a new pile. She spent 20 minutes doing this in complete silence while I sat and waited and tried not to fidget. Finally she looked up at me. Your husband is an idiot, she said. I blinked. Excuse me? An idiot, she repeated. He kept records of everything. These credit card statements show charges at hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores. All while you were home. These bank withdrawals are substantial and regular. And your friend documented everything with dates and times and photos. She tapped the folder. This is a gift. A gift, I echoed. For a divorce attorney? Yes. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to file for divorce immediately on grounds of adultery. We're going to request a forensic accountant to examine all marital assets and accounts. We're going to subpoena his business records because I'm willing to bet he's been using company money for this affair. My stomach tightened. Company money? These withdrawals? Patricia pointed to the bank statements. They're large. Too large to be just personal spending. And some of them are labeled as business expenses, but they correspond with dates your husband was with his mistress. That's embezzlement if he's taking company funds for personal use. I hadn't thought of that. I'd been so focused on the betrayal itself that I hadn't considered the financial implications. His family owns the company, I said. Sterling Industries. His father is CEO. Alexander is vice president. Patricia's eyes sharpened. Even better. Family companies often have looser financial controls. If he's been stealing from his own family's business, they're not going to be happy about that. His mother seemed upset at dinner, I said, remembering Catherine's face when Alexander made his announcement. I imagine she was. No parent wants to watch their child blow up their marriage over dinner. Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started writing. I'm going to need copies of everything in this folder. I'm also going to need you to write down everything you remember about your marriage, your finances, and your husband's behavior over the past 2 years. Every detail matters. Okay, I said. I also need to know what you want, Patricia said, setting down her pen and looking at me directly. Some women want to reconcile. Some want revenge. Some just want to get out as quickly as possible. What do you want, Natasha? I thought about that. About Alexander's smile across the dinner table. About the year of lies. About Simone in those photos, smiling like she'd won something. I want what I'm entitled to, I said. I want my fair share of everything we built together. And I want to make sure he can't do this to someone else without consequences. Patricia smiled for the first time since I'd entered her office. We're going to get along very well, she said. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Patricia asked questions about our assets. The house, the cars, the investments, the retirement accounts. She asked about my contributions to the marriage. I'd worked as an interior designer before we got married, but Alexander had suggested I quit to focus on being a proper wife for someone in his position. I'd given up my career for him. That's good, Patricia said when I told her. Courts look favorably on spouses who sacrifice their careers, especially when the other spouse was building their career during that time with your support. When I finally left her office, I had a stack of paperwork to complete and a date set for filing the divorce petition. Patricia wanted to move quickly before Alexander had time to hide assets or create problems. Gregory met me outside the building. He'd been waiting in a coffee shop across the street. How did it go? He asked. She's good, I said. Really good. She thinks we have a strong case. We walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. It was a beautiful day, sunny and clear, the kind of day that felt wrong for discussing the end of a marriage. I have more information, Gregory said. I did some more digging last night after I texted you. He pulled out his phone and showed me more bank statements. These were from a business account. I shouldn't have access to these, he admitted. But Alexander gave me his passwords last year when he needed me to check something while he was traveling. He never changed them. Look at these transfers. I looked. Regular transfers from the Sterling Industries account to a personal account. Then withdrawals from that personal account that matched the dates in the previous statements. He's been taking money from the company, Gregory said. Small amounts at first. 5,000 here. 10,000 there. But it's been adding up. Over the past year, he's taken almost $200,000. I felt sick. His parents don't know? I don't think so. Thomas trusts Alexander completely. He doesn't micromanage. And the company accountant is older, close to retirement. I don't think he's paying close attention anymore. Why are you telling me this? I asked. If this comes out, it could destroy the company. Your job. Gregory looked at me steadily. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if we don't stop him now, he'll just keep doing it. The amounts are getting bigger. He's getting bolder. Does Simone know where the money comes from? I think so, Gregory said. I've seen the gifts he gives her. Designer bags. Jewelry. A new car last month. She's not stupid. She has to know he's spending way more than his salary would allow. I thought about that. About this woman who was willingly participating in the destruction of my marriage and apparently the theft of company funds. Patricia wants to subpoena the business records, I said. Good, Gregory said. Let her. Thomas needs to know what his son has been doing. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Gregory said, I'm sorry this is happening to you. You deserved better. Thank you, I said. For everything. For telling me. For gathering all this evidence. You didn't have to do any of it. Yes, I did, he said simply. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered it cautiously. Mrs. Sterling? An unfamiliar woman's voice. This is Catherine Sterling, Alexander's mother. I was wondering if we could meet. Just the two of us. I need to talk to you about what happened last night. I looked at Gregory. He raised his eyebrows in question. When? I asked. Today if possible. This afternoon. There's a tea room on Westfield Avenue. Do you know it? I can find it. 3 o'clock, Catherine said. Please come. This is important. She hung up before I could respond. Alexander's mother wants to meet me, I told Gregory. That's interesting, he said. Catherine doesn't usually involve herself in Alexander's personal life. Should I go? Definitely, Gregory said. But be careful. She's loyal to her family first. I spent the hours before the meeting working on the paperwork Patricia had given me. Lists of assets. Timeline of events. Financial records. It was tedious and painful and necessary. At 3 o'clock, I walked into the tea room Catherine had suggested. It was elegant and quiet, the kind of place where wealthy women met for lunch and discussed charity events and social obligations. Catherine was already there, sitting at a corner table. She stood when she saw me, and I noticed she looked different than she had at dinner. Older. Tired. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. A server appeared immediately, and Catherine ordered tea for both of us without asking what I wanted. It was such a typical gesture from her world, assuming she knew best, that I almost smiled. I owe you an apology, Catherine said once the server had left. What happened at dinner last night was inexcusable. I should have said something immediately. Why didn't you? I asked. She sighed. Because I was shocked. And because I've spent 30 years learning to support my husband's family publicly, even when I disagree privately. It's a habit that's hard to break. The tea arrived. Catherine poured for both of us with steady hands. I need to tell you something, she said. About Alexander. About what I've observed over the past year. I waited. I knew something was wrong, Catherine continued. I saw the changes in him. The late nights. The distraction. The way he stopped talking about you the way he used to. But I told myself it was just work stress. That all marriages go through difficult periods. Did you know about Simone? I asked directly. Catherine's hands tightened on her teacup. I suspected. 2 months ago, I saw him at a restaurant with a woman who wasn't you. When I asked him about it later, he said it was a business associate. I wanted to believe him. But you didn't. No, she admitted. I didn't. So I started paying attention. I noticed irregularities in the company accounts. Small things. Expenses that didn't make sense. Transfers that seemed odd. I mentioned it to Thomas, but he dismissed my concerns. He said I didn't understand how business worked. I sipped my tea and waited for her to continue. Last night, when Alexander made that announcement, everything became clear, Catherine said. He wasn't asking for permission. He was declaring what he'd already decided. And he did it in front of us because he thought we would pressure you to accept it. He was using us as leverage. Yes, I said. That's exactly what he was doing. I'm ashamed, Catherine said quietly. I'm ashamed that I raised a son who would treat his wife that way. Who would manipulate people like that. What do you want from me? I asked. Catherine looked at me directly. I want to help you. If you're filing for divorce, and I assume you are, I want to provide testimony about the financial irregularities I've noticed. I want to make sure you get what you're entitled to. And I want to make sure Alexander faces consequences for what he's done. I stared at her. You'd testify against your own son? I'd testify to the truth, she corrected. There's a difference. I love Alexander. He's my child. But what he's doing is wrong, and if I stay silent, I'm complicit. It was almost exactly what Gregory had said. My attorney is Patricia Hammond, I said. Catherine nodded. I know of her. She's excellent. Have her contact me. I'll provide whatever information I can about the company finances. Thomas won't like that. Thomas will have to adjust, Catherine said with a hint of steel in her voice. He's been too lenient with Alexander for too long. It's time our son learned that actions have consequences. We talked for another hour. Catherine told me more about what she'd observed. Unusual spending patterns. Meetings Alexander had claimed were business-related that she'd later learned were personal. Phone calls he'd taken in private, speaking in low tones that suggested secrecy. I should have said something sooner, Catherine said as we prepared to leave. To you. To Thomas. I should have confronted Alexander months ago. We all should have done things differently, I said. Catherine put her hand over mine briefly. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Walking out last night took courage. Don't let Alexander or anyone else make you doubt that. After leaving the tea room, I called Patricia and told her about the meeting. She was pleased. Catherine Sterling is a powerful ally, Patricia said. If she's willing to testify about financial irregularities, it strengthens our case significantly. I'll contact her tomorrow. That evening, I stayed in the hotel room and continued working on the paperwork. I wrote down everything I could remember. Every time Alexander had lied. Every instance of suspicious behavior. Every moment over the past year when I'd felt like something was wrong but had talked myself out of trusting my instincts. My phone buzzed. Another unfamiliar number. I answered it. Natasha. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. This is Simone. I went cold. How did you get this number? From Alexander's phone. Look, I know this is weird, but we need to talk. Alexander told me everything. About the dinner. About you leaving. About the divorce. I have nothing to say to you, I said. Please, Simone said. Just give me 5 minutes. I'm not what you think. I didn't know he was going to do what he did at that dinner. He told me he'd already told you about us, that you were okay with it. He lied to you too, I said. How does that feel? There was silence on the other end. Then, I think we both need to know the truth about who Alexander really is. Meet me tomorrow. That coffee shop on Parker Street. Noon. She hung up before I could refuse. I sat staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to ignore this. To block her number. To never speak to the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. But another part of me was curious. What did Simone think she could tell me that I didn't already know? I texted Gregory. Simone just called me. She wants to meet tomorrow. His response came immediately. Don't go alone. I'll come with you. I texted back. Okay. Then I lay back on the bed and wondered what fresh disaster tomorrow would bring. I walked into the coffee shop on Parker Street at exactly noon the next day. Gregory was already there, sitting at the same corner table where he'd shown me the photos of Alexander and Simone just 2 days earlier. 2 days. It felt like a lifetime. Simone was easy to spot. She looked exactly like her photos. Blonde, pretty, younger than me. She was sitting at a table by the window, nervously tapping her fingers against a coffee cup. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my first car. Money that had likely come from Alexander. From stolen company funds. She looked up as I approached and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear maybe. Or guilt. Natasha, she said, standing up. Thank you for coming. I didn't shake her hand. I didn't smile. I just sat down across from her. Gregory remained at his table, close enough to intervene if needed but far enough away to give us privacy. You have 5 minutes, I said. Simone took a breath. I know you hate me. I would hate me too. But I need you to know that Alexander told me you two were separated. That you were living apart. That the divorce was already in progress. And you believed him, I said flatly. Yes, she said. I know how that sounds. But he was convincing. He showed me paperwork that he said were separation documents. He told me about marriage counseling that hadn't worked. He made it seem like your marriage had been over for a long time. We were living in the same house, I said. Sleeping in the same bed. How exactly did he explain that? Simone's face flushed. He said it was temporary. That you were working out the financial details before making it public. That it was complicated because of his family's business. I studied her. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. But that didn't change what she'd done. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because yesterday, after you left that dinner, Alexander came to my apartment. He was furious. He said you'd ruined everything. That you were being vindictive and unreasonable. He said you knew about us and had agreed to the open marriage idea, but then you'd changed your mind to hurt him. None of that is true, I said. I know, Simone said quietly. I started thinking about it after he left. Started questioning all the things he'd told me. So I did some research. I found your social media. I saw photos of you two together from just a few weeks ago at some charity event. You didn't look separated. You looked married. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo from Alexander's social media. Him and me at a fundraiser 3 weeks ago. His arm around me. Both of us smiling. He posted this, Simone said. While he was telling me your marriage was over. I'm not stupid. I realized he'd been lying to me. About everything. So you called me to confess? I asked. I called you because I think we've both been played, Simone said. And because I have information you might need. She pulled out a folder from her bag. It was smaller than Gregory's folder but still substantial. What is this? I asked. Evidence, Simone said. Text messages between Alexander and me. Photos. Receipts. I saved everything because part of me always knew something was off. I just didn't want to admit it. I opened the folder. Inside were printed text messages where Alexander promised Simone he was leaving me. Where he told her he loved her. Where he made plans for a future together that he'd apparently never intended to deliver. There were also receipts. For the jewelry. The car. The apartment rent that Alexander had apparently been paying for her. He's been supporting you, I said. Yes, Simone admitted. He said it was temporary. Until the divorce was finalized and he got his settlement. He said you were wealthy from your family and would be fine. I don't come from money, I said. Everything Alexander has comes from his family's company, which means everything he gave you was stolen. Simone's face went white. Stolen? He's been embezzling from Sterling Industries, I said. Taking company money and using it for personal expenses. Like you. Oh my God, Simone whispered. She looked genuinely shocked. I didn't know. He told me it was his money. His salary and bonuses. It wasn't, I said. I stood up. Thank you for this information. My attorney will be in touch if we need anything else from you. Wait, Simone said. That's it? You're just leaving? What did you expect? I asked. You slept with my husband for over a year. You took gifts that were bought with stolen money. You participated in the destruction of my marriage. What exactly am I supposed to do with that information? I'm sorry, Simone said. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. I thought I was in a relationship with someone who was honest with me. I didn't know I was the other woman until 2 days ago. I looked at her sitting there in her expensive dress, with her expensive bag, surrounded by the trappings of a lifestyle that Alexander had purchased for her with stolen money. You were convenient, I said. That's all. He didn't love you. He loved what you represented. An escape from responsibility. A place where he could pretend to be someone different. But it was all a fantasy, and now it's over. I took the folder and walked away. Gregory stood up and followed me out of the coffee shop. That was ice cold, he said once we were outside. I'm impressed. She wanted sympathy, I said. I don't have any to give. We walked to my car. Gregory leaned against it and looked at me seriously. What she gave you could be useful, he said. Those text messages prove Alexander was planning to leave you. The receipts prove he was spending massive amounts of money on her. Combined with everything else we have, it's damning. Patricia will know what to do with it, I said. I drove straight to Patricia's office. She saw me immediately when I told her secretary I had new evidence. This keeps getting better, Patricia said after reviewing Simone's folder. Alexander essentially provided a documentary record of his affair and his theft. He kept receipts. He texted his plans. He's made my job remarkably easy. What happens now? I asked. Now we file, Patricia said. I've prepared all the paperwork. Divorce petition on grounds of adultery. Motion to freeze marital assets. Request for forensic accounting of all business and personal accounts. And I'm going to send a copy of all this evidence to the district attorney's office. The DA? I asked. Embezzlement is a crime, Patricia said. If Alexander stole from his family's company, that's a matter for law enforcement, not just divorce court. The DA will decide whether to press charges. His family, I said. This is going to destroy them. His family will be fine, Patricia said firmly. They have money and lawyers and resources. And honestly, they need to know what their son has been doing. Catherine already knows some of it. Thomas needs to know the rest. I thought about Thomas. About his pride in Alexander. About how he'd groomed his son to take over the company someday. When do we file? I asked. Tomorrow morning, Patricia said. First thing. I want to catch Alexander off guard. He's probably expecting you to cool off and come back, maybe agree to counseling or some other delay tactic. Instead, he's going to be served with divorce papers and a demand for financial records. He'll be angry, I said. Let him be angry, Patricia said. Angry people make mistakes. And we're going to document every single one. I spent that evening at the hotel going through everything one more time. All the evidence. All the statements. All the photos and receipts and text messages that told the story of Alexander's betrayal. My phone rang. Catherine. I heard from Patricia, she said without preamble. She told me about the embezzlement. About how much Alexander has taken. I'm sorry, I said. Don't apologize, Catherine said sharply. You didn't do this. Alexander did. I've spent the day going through company records with our accountant. Patricia was right. The amounts are substantial. Thomas is devastated. How is he? I asked. Furious. Heartbroken. Ashamed. Catherine's voice was tight. He's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Alexander is going to be suspended from the company pending a full investigation. Catherine, I never wanted to hurt your family, I said. You haven't hurt us, Catherine said. Alexander hurt us. You're just shining a light on what he's done. There's a difference. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of the hotel room and thought about how quickly everything had fallen apart. 4 days ago I'd been married. I'd had a home and a life and a future I thought I understood. Now I had hotel room and a divorce attorney and a stack of evidence that proved my entire marriage had been built on lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Gregory. Alexander knows. He just called me screaming. Says you've destroyed his life. I told him he destroyed it himself. Stay safe. He's spiraling. I texted back. I'm in a hotel. He doesn't know where. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I was exhausted and angry and sad all at once. I'd loved Alexander once. I'd believed in our marriage. I'd given up my career and my independence to build a life with him. And he'd thrown it all away for a blonde in a red dress and the thrill of getting away with something. I called Patricia. Gregory says Alexander knows about the filing. He's upset. Good, Patricia said. Let him be upset. Stay where you are. Don't go home. Don't meet with him alone. If he contacts you, document everything but don't respond. Okay, I said. Natasha, Patricia said, her voice gentler than I'd heard before. I know this is hard. I know it feels overwhelming. But you're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself and holding him accountable. That takes strength. I don't feel strong, I admitted. Strength isn't about not being scared or hurt, Patricia said. It's about doing what needs to be done anyway. You're doing that. Trust the process. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started researching something I'd been thinking about for days. Interior design programs. Business licenses. What it would take to restart the career I'd abandoned 3 years ago. I'd spent 3 years being Alexander's wife, supporting his career, attending his events, smiling for his photos. It was time to remember who I'd been before all that. Time to figure out who I could become after. I made a list, a long list, things I needed to do, places I needed to go, people I needed to call. First, survive the divorce. Second, rebuild my career. Third, figure out how to trust again, how to be myself again, how to exist in the world as Natasha, not as Alexander's wife. It seemed impossible. But 4 days ago, walking out of that dinner had seemed impossible too. And I'd done it. I could do this. I fell asleep that night with my laptop open and my lists half finished and a strange sense of determination settling over me like armor. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. But I was ready. The process server arrived at Sterling Industries at 9 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't there to see it, but Gregory told me about it later. How Alexander had been walking into the building, coffee in hand, expecting a normal workday. How the server had approached him in the lobby, in front of security guards and early arriving employees, and handed him the envelope. How Alexander's face had gone from confused to pale to red in the span of 30 seconds. I was in Patricia's office when it happened, signing the final documents and trying to keep my hands steady. He's been served, Patricia said, checking her phone. The process server just confirmed. I nodded. I felt numb. This was really happening. After 3 years of marriage, after all the promises and plans and dreams, it was ending with legal documents and lawyers and accusations. He's going to come looking for you, Patricia warned. He's going to want to talk, to explain, to convince you to drop this. You need to be prepared for that. I won't meet with him, I said. Good. But he'll try anyway. Angry spouses always do. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen over the next few days. Alexander will receive notice of the asset freeze. His lawyers will file a response to the divorce petition. There will be motions and counter-motions. It's going to get messy. How messy? I asked. He's going to try to paint you as vindictive, as someone who's trying to destroy him out of spite. He'll claim the evidence is manufactured or taken out of context. He'll try to make himself the victim. Patricia's expression was hard. That's what they always do. But we have proof, I said. We do. And that's why we're going to win. But it won't be easy and it won't be quick. You need to prepare yourself for that. I spent the rest of the morning in Patricia's office, going over strategy. She wanted to move aggressively to keep Alexander on the defensive, to make sure he didn't have time to hide assets or create alternative narratives. At noon my phone rang. Alexander. I showed Patricia the screen. Don't answer, she said. Let it go to voicemail. I did. A minute later, a notification appeared. Voicemail. Then another call. Then another. He's going to keep calling, Patricia said. Eventually you're going to need to change your number. By 2 o'clock, Alexander had called 17 times. He'd left 3 voicemails. Patricia listened to them with me taking notes. The first voicemail was pleading. "Natasha, please call me back. We need to talk about this. You're making a huge mistake. I know you're angry, but divorce isn't the answer. We can work this out. Please." The second was angry. "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything I've given you. After everything we've built together. You're going to regret this. You're going to destroy both of us." The third was desperate. "Please. Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain. I love you. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Don't throw away 3 years over one mistake." "One mistake," I said bitterly. He had an affair for over a year, stole from his family's company, and announced an open marriage at a dinner table. That's a lot more than one mistake. "Document the calls," Patricia said. "Save the voicemails. If he starts threatening you or harassing you, we can get a restraining order." At 3 o'clock, Gregory texted me, "Alexander just stormed out of a meeting with his father. It did not go well. Thomas showed him the evidence of the embezzlement. Alexander tried to deny it, but the numbers don't lie. He's been officially suspended." I texted back, "Is he coming here?" "Probably. Be careful." I showed Patricia the text. "Time for you to leave," she said. "Go back to your hotel. Stay there. Order room service. Don't go out." I left through the building's back entrance and took a circuitous route to my hotel, checking my mirrors constantly to make sure I wasn't being followed. It felt paranoid and necessary at the same time. Back in my hotel room, I tried to focus on work. On the interior design research I'd been doing. On plans for restarting my career. But I kept checking my phone, watching for the next call, the next voicemail, the next attempt by Alexander to contact me. At 5 o'clock, someone knocked on my hotel room door. I froze. The hotel staff had been instructed not to give out my room number. Nobody should know I was here. The knock came again. Louder. "Natasha, I know you're in there. Your car is in the parking lot. Open the door." Alexander. My heart started pounding. I moved away from the door and pulled out my phone. "I'm not leaving until you talk to me," Alexander said through the door. "I'll stay out here all night if I have to. I need to explain." I called hotel security. Told them there was someone at my door who I didn't want to see. They said they'd send someone up immediately. "Natasha." Alexander's voice was strained now. "Please. I'm begging you. Just open the door. Let me explain what really happened. Let me tell you my side." "I don't want to hear it," I called back. "You owe me that much," Alexander said. "After 3 years, you owe me a conversation." "I don't owe you anything," I said. I heard footsteps in the hallway. A security guard's voice. "Sir, you need to leave. The guest has requested that you vacate the premises." "She's my wife," Alexander said. "She's a guest who doesn't want to see you. You need to leave now or I'll call the police." There was a long moment of silence. Then Alexander's voice, cold and hard. "Fine. But this isn't over. Tell her this isn't over." Footsteps retreating. The security guard knocked gently on my door. "Ma'am?" "He's gone. But I'm going to station someone in the hallway for the rest of the evening, just in case." "Thank you," I said through the door. I called Patricia and told her what had happened. "That was harassment," she said. "I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow morning. He's not allowed to contact you or come near you. Will that stop him?" I asked. "If he violates it, he goes to jail. So yes, it should stop him. Most people aren't willing to risk that." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and tried to process what had just happened. Alexander had tracked me down. Had shown up at my hotel. Had refused to leave until security forced him to. This was not the man I'd married. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen this side of him before. Maybe the charm and the kindness had always been a mask, and now that mask was slipping. My phone rang. "Catherine. I heard Alexander went to your hotel," she said. "Are you all right?" "How did you know?" I asked. "Thomas had him followed. After this morning's meeting, we realized Alexander might do something reckless. We were right. He wanted to talk," I said. "To explain." "There's nothing to explain," Catherine said firmly. "He made his choices. Now he has to live with the consequences. Thomas and I are fully supporting you in this divorce, Natasha. We want you to know that." "Thank you," I said. "We're also going to press charges," Catherine continued, "for the embezzlement. The accountant confirmed that Alexander took over $300,000 from the company over the past 18 months. That's a felony. $300,000. The number was staggering. How much did he spend on Simone? I asked. About half of it, Catherine said. The rest went to other things. Gambling, it looks like. And some investments that went badly. He was trying to make fast money and lost it instead. I thought about Alexander at the dinner table, calmly announcing an open marriage. He'd been desperate. Trapped by his own lies and theft. The open marriage had been a last desperate attempt to keep everything from falling apart. I'm sorry this happened to your family, I said. I'm sorry it happened to you, Catherine replied. You deserved better than what my son gave you. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Every car door in the parking lot made me wonder if Alexander had come back. At 2 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You think you've destroyed me. But you have no idea what I'm capable of. This is just the beginning. I took a screenshot and sent it to Patricia. Her response came immediately, don't reply. I'm filing for the restraining order first thing tomorrow. This is evidence of harassment and threats. I spent the rest of the night sitting up in bed, staring at the door, jumping at every sound. When morning finally came, I was exhausted and wired at the same time. I got the call from Patricia at 8 o'clock. The restraining order has been filed. Alexander will be served this morning. He's not allowed within 500 feet of you, your home, your workplace, or anywhere else you regularly frequent. If he contacts you again, call the police immediately. Okay, I said. There's something else, Patricia said. The DA's office called. They're opening an investigation into the embezzlement. Alexander is officially under criminal investigation now. How long will that take? I asked. Months probably. But it means our divorce case is now tied to a criminal case. That actually helps us. If he's convicted, it strengthens our position significantly. What about Simone? I asked. Is she in trouble too? The DA is looking into that, Patricia said. If she knew the money was stolen, she could be charged as an accessory. But it depends on what they can prove. I thought about Simone in that coffee shop, claiming she hadn't known where the money came from. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she was just a good liar. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Gregory called at noon. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said, which was a lie, but I was too tired to explain the truth. Alexander is falling apart, Gregory said. He showed up at my apartment this morning, ranting about how you've ruined him, how everyone has turned against him, how his own parents are betraying him. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him he did this to himself, that he made choices and now he has to face the consequences. He called me a traitor and left. Gregory paused. I've known him for 15 years. I've never seen him like this. Like what? I asked. Unhinged, desperate, almost manic. I'm worried about what he might do next. He sent me a threatening text last night, I said. I know. Thomas told me. They're trying to convince Alexander to check into a facility, get some help. But he's refusing. I thought about Alexander, the man I'd married. The man who'd been charming and confident and always in control. That man was gone, replaced by someone angry and desperate and dangerous. Thank you for warning me, I said to Gregory. Just stay safe, he said. This will get worse before it gets better. He was right about that. The restraining order was served to Alexander at his apartment at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. I know because Patricia called to tell me, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction that she usually kept carefully controlled. He tried to refuse service, she said. Told the process server that it was all a misunderstanding, that you were just upset and would change your mind. The server told him that wasn't how restraining orders work. I was sitting in a different hotel, one I'd moved to the night before at Patricia's suggestion. If Alexander had tracked me down once, he could do it again. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait, Patricia said. The forensic accountant is going through all the financial records. The DA is building their case. And we're preparing for the divorce hearing next month. Next month. It felt both too soon and too far away. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Can you meet me for lunch? Same place as before. 1 o'clock. I arrived at the tea room 10 minutes early and found Catherine already there, looking more composed than she had at our last meeting. Today she wore a navy suit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like the society matriarch she'd always been. But her eyes were tired. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I know this is difficult. How are you? I asked. Catherine sighed. Managing. Thomas is devastated. He built that company from nothing, planned to pass it to Alexander someday. Now that dream is gone. We've had to tell the board about the embezzlement. They're considering filing a civil suit against Alexander to recover the money. How much will they recover? I asked. Not much. He spent most of it. Gambled away a significant portion. The rest went to Simone and other expenses. Catherine's mouth tightened. We're also discovering other problems. Business deals that went bad because Alexander was distracted. Clients who are threatening to leave because of the scandal. The damage is extensive. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me was glad that Alexander was facing consequences. Part of me felt guilty for the collateral damage to Catherine and Thomas. I'm sorry, I said. Stop apologizing, Catherine said sharply. You exposed the truth. That's not something to apologize for. If anyone should apologize, it's me. I should have paid more attention. Should have questioned things sooner. Should have raised a son who knew the difference between right and wrong. The server arrived with tea. Catherine poured for both of us with hands that weren't quite steady. There's something I need to tell you, Catherine said once we were alone again. Something I discovered yesterday. About Simone. I waited. She's not the first, Catherine said quietly. Alexander has had affairs before. During your marriage. I felt like I'd been hit. What? I was going through old credit card statements, looking for more evidence of the embezzlement. I found charges from 3 years ago. Hotels, restaurants, gifts. All while you were engaged. Catherine's voice was heavy with shame. He was cheating on you before you even got married. I set down my teacup carefully because my hands were shaking. Who? I asked. I don't know. The charges don't tell me that. But the pattern is clear. Regular charges at the same hotel. Same restaurant. Same jewelry store. Catherine pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. I made copies for your attorney. I opened the folder. Inside were credit card statements going back 4 years. Catherine had highlighted the suspicious charges in yellow. There were dozens of them. He's a serial cheater, I said. Yes, Catherine agreed. And I'm ashamed to say I suspected it even back then. There were signs. Late nights. Unexplained absences. But I told myself I was being paranoid. That Alexander was just busy with work. Did Thomas know? I asked. No. I never told him my suspicions. I thought I was protecting our son. Instead, I enabled him. Catherine's eyes were wet. I'm so sorry, Natasha. You deserved to know the truth before you married him. I stared at the credit card statements. Evidence of betrayals I'd never even suspected. While I'd been planning our wedding, choosing flowers and sending invitations and dreaming about our future, Alexander had been with someone else. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you deserve the complete truth, Catherine said. And because it strengthens your case. It shows a pattern of behavior. It proves this wasn't just one mistake as Alexander keeps claiming. It was his character. I took the folder. Added it to the growing pile of evidence against my husband. There's more, Catherine said. Thomas spoke with the company's lawyer yesterday. They're recommending that we cooperate fully with the DA's investigation, which means turning over all of Alexander's business records, including some communications that suggest he may have been involved in other illegal activities. What kind of activities? I asked. Insider trading, possibly. Using company information to make personal investments. It's still being investigated, but the lawyer thinks there's enough evidence to warrant concern. I felt overwhelmed. Each day brought new revelations about who Alexander really was. Each one worse than the last. How did I not see this? I asked. How did I live with him for 3 years and not know? Because he's a good liar, Catherine said simply. He's been lying his entire life. To us. To you. To everyone. He's very skilled at it. After lunch, I went straight to Patricia's office. She reviewed the new evidence with her usual thoroughness. This is excellent, she said. It establishes a pattern. It shows premeditation. It completely undermines any argument that this was a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. What about the insider trading? I asked. If that's proven, it adds another criminal charge. More prison time, potentially. And it gives us more leverage in the divorce settlement. Patricia looked at me seriously. Natasha, you need to prepare yourself. This case is going to get national attention. The DA is talking about making an example of Alexander. Rich man embezzles from family company, has multiple affairs, possibly commits securities fraud. The media will love it. I don't want attention, I said. I know. But it's coming anyway. We'll do everything we can to protect your privacy, but you need to be ready. That evening I got a call from a reporter. I don't know how they got my number. They asked if I'd like to comment on my husband's criminal investigation. I hung up without responding. Then the reporter called back. And again. Finally, I blocked the number. By the next morning, my name was in the news. Wife files for divorce after discovering embezzlement scheme. The article was short and didn't include many details, but it was enough to make my stomach turn. Gregory called. Don't read the comments on any of the articles. Trust me. Too late, I said. I'd already made that mistake. The comments were brutal. Some people called me a gold digger. Others said I must have known about the embezzlement and was trying to cover my tracks. A few defended me, but not many. People are cruel when they're anonymous, Gregory said. Try to ignore it. How? I asked. By focusing on what matters. Your case, your future, your healing. Everything else is just noise. He was right, but the noise was loud and constant and impossible to ignore completely. The forensic accountant called Patricia with an update. They traced all of Alexander's withdrawals and transfers. The total amount stolen from Sterling Industries was now confirmed at $370,000. Of that, $160,000 had gone to Simone, $90,000 to gambling losses, $50,000 to bad investments, the rest to various other expenses. None of it went to legitimate business purposes, Patricia told me. It was all personal, all theft. The DA scheduled Alexander's arraignment for the following week. He'd be formally charged with embezzlement and possibly other crimes. Catherine called to tell me that the Sterling Industries board had voted to file a civil suit against Alexander to recover the stolen funds. They're also removing him from all company records and positions. He'll have no connection to the business after this. How is Thomas handling it? I asked. Poorly. He's aged 10 years in the past 2 weeks. He keeps asking where he went wrong as a father. I don't have answers for him. I thought about Thomas, who'd always been so proud of Alexander. Who'd introduced his son to business associates with such obvious satisfaction. Who'd planned for Alexander to take over the company someday. All of that was gone now. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my entire life. My career. My family. My reputation. All because you couldn't forgive one mistake. I'll never forgive you for this. I forwarded it to Patricia. Her response? That's a violation of the restraining order. I'm sending this to the police. An hour later, a detective called me. Mrs. Sterling? I'm Detective Morrison. We've received evidence that your husband is violating a restraining order. I need to ask you some questions. I told him about the text. About Alexander showing up at my hotel. About the threatening message from before. He's been staying at his apartment, Detective Morrison said. We're going to go talk to him, make sure he understands the consequences of violating the order. If he contacts you again, call us immediately. That night, Gregory called with news. Alexander got arrested. Just for a few hours. They let him go with a warning about the restraining order. But he's spiraling, Natasha. He's losing it. I know, I said. He called me from the police station. Ranting about how unfair this all is. How he's the victim. How you've turned everyone against him. Gregory paused. He's not taking responsibility for anything. He genuinely seems to believe this is all your fault. That's typical for people like him, I said. I've been doing research, reading about narcissism and manipulation and how people justify their own bad behavior. Alexander fit the pattern perfectly. Just be careful, Gregory said. I think he's capable of anything right now. I hung up and sat in my hotel room and wondered how much longer this would go on. How many more revelations? How many more threats? How many more news articles and court dates and lawyer meetings? I was exhausted. Emotionally. Physically. Spiritually. But I couldn't stop now. Stopping meant letting Alexander win. Meant letting him get away with everything he'd done. So I kept going. One day at a time. One revelation at a time. One piece of evidence at a time. Building the case that would finally bring him down. The arraignment was scheduled for Tuesday morning at the downtown courthouse. Patricia advised me not to attend, but I wanted to be there. I needed to see Alexander face formal charges. Needed to watch him stand before a judge and answer for what he'd done. I sat in the back of the courtroom wearing sunglasses and a dark green blazer, hoping not to be recognized. Gregory sat beside me, a solid presence in the chaos. Alexander arrived with his lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a gray suit who carried himself with the confidence of someone who usually won. Alexander looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was uncombed. His face was pale and drawn. He scanned the courtroom and his eyes landed on me. For a moment we locked gazes. I saw hatred there, pure and simple. Then his lawyer touched his arm and said something, and Alexander turned away. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The proceedings began. Alexander Sterling, you are charged with embezzlement in the first degree, 23 counts. Wire fraud, 15 counts. And securities fraud, 8 counts. How do you plead? Not guilty, Alexander said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. The prosecutor argued for high bail, citing Alexander's wealth and flight risk. Alexander's lawyer argued for release on his own recognizance, claiming his client had deep ties to the community and no prior criminal record. The judge set bail at $500,000. I saw Alexander's face go white. That was a substantial amount even for his family. Court is adjourned, the judge said. As everyone stood to leave, I heard a commotion behind me. I turned to see reporters rushing toward Alexander, shouting questions. Camera flashes. Microphones thrust forward. Mr. Sterling, did you steal from your family? Is it true you had multiple affairs? What do you have to say to your wife? Alexander's lawyer pushed through the crowd, shielding his client. But not before I saw Alexander's face. He looked hunted. Desperate. Gregory touched my arm. Let's go. Back in trance. We slipped out through a side door that opened into a narrow hallway. A few reporters spotted us anyway. Mrs. Sterling, how does it feel to see your husband arrested? I kept walking. Do you think he's guilty? I pushed through the courthouse doors and into the parking garage where Gregory had parked his car. That was intense, Gregory said once we were safely inside. Yes, I agreed. My phone buzzed. Catherine. I saw the news, she said. Thomas posted bail. Against my advice. Alexander is being released. Why would Thomas do that? I asked. Because he's still Alexander's father. Because he's hoping this is all a mistake. Because he can't quite accept that his son is a criminal. Catherine sighed. I'm sorry. I tried to talk him out of it. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. The news coverage that afternoon was extensive. Alexander's arrest was the lead story on every local station. By evening it had made national news. Local businessman charged in embezzlement scheme. Sterling Industries executive accused of stealing hundreds of thousands. Wife files for divorce after discovering husband's crimes. My phone rang constantly. Reporters. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years. Distant relatives. Everyone wanted to know the story. Everyone wanted details. I turned off my phone. Patricia called on the hotel room phone. Don't talk to anyone from the media. If they contact you, refer them to me. Don't make any public statements. Don't respond to comments online. Just stay quiet. I am staying quiet, I said. Good. The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. That's when the prosecution will present evidence and the judge will decide if there's enough to proceed to trial. It's going to be a media circus. That night I watched the news coverage. Saw Alexander leaving the courthouse with his lawyer. Saw his mugshot. Saw interviews with experts discussing the case. One legal analyst said, "This is a clear case of someone who thought they were above the law. Sterling had every advantage in life, but he still chose to steal from his own family. The arrogance is astounding." Another said, "The real victims here are the Sterling family. They trusted their son and he betrayed that trust in the worst possible way." Nobody mentioned me. I was just the wife in all the coverage. A footnote to Alexander's story. The next morning, I woke to find my photo on the front page of the local newspaper. It was from a charity event 2 years ago, Alexander and me smiling for the camera. The headline, "Behind every scandal, the wife who discovered the truth." I called Patricia. They printed my photo. I know. I'm already drafting a cease and desist letter. But Natasha, you need to accept that your life is going to be public for a while. This is a big story. People are interested. I didn't ask for this, I said. I know. But it's happening anyway. The best thing you can do is focus on yourself. On your healing. On building your future. Let the media circus happen around you, but don't let it consume you. That afternoon, I received a package at the hotel. No return address. Inside was a note. "You destroyed a good man. I hope you can live with yourself." I threw it away and told hotel security to screen all deliveries. Gregory called that evening. Simone gave an interview to a magazine. She's claiming she was a victim too. That Alexander lied to her and manipulated her. Let me guess, I said. She's positioning herself as another wronged woman. Exactly. She's trying to control the narrative. I pulled up the article on my phone. There was Simone in a blue dress, looking tearful and vulnerable. I had no idea he was married, she was quoted as saying. He told me he was divorced. When I found out the truth, I was devastated. I feel terrible for his wife. We're both victims of his lies. The comments on the article were mixed. Some people believed her. Others called her names I won't repeat. She's making herself look sympathetic, Gregory said, trying to avoid legal consequences. Will it work? I asked. Maybe. If the DA believes she genuinely didn't know the money was stolen, they might not charge her. But if they can prove she knew, she's in trouble. 3 days later, the DA's office announced they were charging Simone as an accessory to embezzlement. The evidence showed she'd known about Alexander's marriage and had knowingly accepted gifts purchased with stolen money. Her sympathetic interview hadn't saved her. The preliminary hearing arrived. Patricia advised me not to attend this one. It's going to be all procedural, she said. The prosecution will present evidence. The defense will argue it's not sufficient. The judge will decide. There's no benefit to you being there. So I stayed at the hotel and watched the news coverage. Saw lawyers entering the courthouse. Saw Thomas and Catherine arrive, both looking grim. The hearing lasted 6 hours. At the end, the judge ruled there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Alexander was going to face a jury. Patricia called with an update. The trial is set for 3 months from now. That gives us time to finalize the divorce proceedings. I want to get your divorce finalized before the criminal trial begins. Why? I asked. Because if you're still married when he goes to trial, you could be called as a witness. If you're divorced, that's less likely. Also, I want you free of him before he potentially goes to prison. Prison. The word hung in the air between us. How long could he get? I asked. With the charges he's facing? 10 to 15 years probably. Maybe more if they prove the insider trading. I thought about Alexander spending a decade or more in prison. It should have made me happy. Instead, I just felt empty. That week, Sterling Industries announced they were officially cutting ties with Alexander. His name was removed from all company materials. His parking space was reassigned. His office was cleaned out. Catherine called to tell me about it. Thomas supervised the removal of Alexander's belongings himself. He wanted to make sure it was done properly. I think it helped him in a way. Gave him something concrete to do. How is he really doing? I asked. He's broken, Catherine said quietly. He's lost his son in a sense. Lost the future he'd planned for the company. Lost his faith in his own judgment. He keeps asking how he missed the signs. We all missed the signs, I said. Some of us saw them and ignored them, Catherine corrected. That's worse. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Patricia had submitted all our evidence. Alexander's lawyer had filed counter-motions, claiming I was exaggerating the affair, that the marriage had been troubled on both sides, that I deserved less in the settlement because I hadn't contributed financially. Patricia demolished each argument systematically. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge scheduled a final hearing for 6 weeks away. By the end of next month, you'll be divorced, Patricia told me. Free to move on with your life. But moving on felt impossible. My life was still consumed by legal proceedings and media coverage and the slow unraveling of everything I'd thought I knew about my marriage. One evening I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Natasha. A man's voice I didn't recognize. This is Robert Chen from the Sterling Industries board. I'm calling because we'd like to offer you a position with the company. I sat up straight. What? We need someone to redesign our executive offices. Catherine mentioned you used to be an interior designer. We'd like to hire you for the project. I was stunned. I haven't worked in 3 years. Do you? This is our way of showing support. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time. But we'd love to work with you if you're interested. After we hung up, I sat staring at the wall. A job offer. A real opportunity to restart my career. Something that was mine, not connected to Alexander except through the irony that his crimes had led to this chance. I called Gregory. Sterling Industries wants to hire me. That's amazing, he said. Are you going to take it? I don't know. Feels strange. Working for Alexander's family company. It's not his company anymore, Gregory pointed out. He's been completely removed. And it's a good opportunity. A real chance to rebuild your career. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I actually slept well for the first time in weeks. Maybe it was knowing the divorce would be finalized soon. Maybe it was the job offer. Maybe it was just exhaustion finally catching up with me. But I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The divorce hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. I dressed carefully in a maroon suit that Patricia had helped me choose. Professional. Confident. Nothing flashy. You're asking for a fair settlement? Patricia had coached me. Half the marital assets minus what Alexander stole. Alimony for 3 years while you rebuild your career. You're not being greedy. You're being reasonable. Alexander sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with his lawyer. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. He didn't look at me once. The proceedings took 2 hours. Patricia presented our evidence methodically. Proof of the affair, documentation of the embezzlement, evidence of Alexander's lies. His lawyer tried to argue for a smaller settlement, claiming Alexander's criminal charges meant he had no money left. Patricia countered by pointing out that the Sterling family still had significant wealth, and Alexander would likely inherit from that wealth eventually. The fact that Mr. Sterling stole and spent marital funds doesn't mean his wife should suffer financially, she argued. The judge listened carefully to both sides. Then she ruled. I got the house. Half of all remaining bank accounts. My car. Alimony of $5,000 per month for 3 years. And Alexander was required to pay my legal fees. Divorce granted, the judge said. This marriage is hereby dissolved. Just like that, it was over. 3 years of marriage ended with a gavel strike. I walked out of the courthouse a single woman. Patricia hugged me in the parking garage. Congratulations. You're free. Free. The word felt strange. I'd been Mrs. Alexander Sterling for 3 years. Before that, I'd been Alexander's girlfriend, Alexander's fiancée. I'd built my entire adult identity around him. Now I was just Natasha. Just myself. What do I do now? I asked. Whatever you want, Patricia said. That's the beauty of it. Your life is yours again. I drove to the hotel and sat in my room and tried to feel something. Relief, joy, satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. My phone rang. Catherine. I heard the verdict, she said. I'm glad you got what you deserved. Thank you, I said. For everything. For testifying. For supporting me. You earned that support, Catherine said. Have you thought about the job offer? I have, I said. I think I want to do it. Wonderful. When can you start? We discussed details. The project would take 3 months. I'd redesign the executive floor, creating new offices and common spaces. The budget was substantial. The timeline was flexible. We trust you, Catherine said. Create something beautiful. After we hung up, I sat down with my laptop and started sketching ideas. For the first time in weeks, I felt creative energy flowing. I could see the spaces in my mind. Could imagine how they'd look. Could plan colors and textures and layouts. This was mine. My work. My vision. I spent the rest of the day designing, stopping only when my eyes got tired and my hands cramped. The next morning, I moved out of the hotel and into a furnished apartment I'd rented downtown. It was temporary just until I figured out what I wanted long-term. But it was mine. I'd signed the lease myself. Paid the deposit with money from my settlement. Gregory helped me move the few belongings I'd accumulated during my hotel stay. This is nice, he said, looking around the apartment. Good location. Good light. It's perfect, I agreed. For now. Have you been back to the house yet? He asked. To get your things? Not yet, I admitted. The house felt like enemy territory. I wasn't ready. Want me to come with you? Gregory offered. Make it easier? Would you? I asked. Of course. We drove to the house the next afternoon. I'd called ahead to make sure Alexander wouldn't be there. His lawyer had confirmed he was meeting with his criminal defense team all day. Walking through the front door felt surreal. This house where I'd lived for 3 years suddenly felt like a museum. Everything was the same, but nothing felt familiar. What do you want to take? Gregory asked. Everything that's mine, I said. Clothes, books, personal items. We spent 3 hours packing. My clothes from the closet. My books from the shelves. Photo albums from before my marriage. Kitchen items I'd brought with me when I moved in. I left behind everything we'd bought together. The furniture. The artwork. The carefully curated decorations that had made this house look perfect for Alexander's social climbing. None of it was mine. Not really. It had all been part of the performance of being Mrs. Sterling. As we were loading the last box into Gregory's car, a neighbor approached. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down. Natasha, dear, she said, her face full of false sympathy. I heard about the divorce. Such a shame. You two seemed so happy. We weren't, I said simply. Well, if you ever need anything, Mrs. Patterson said, clearly fishing for gossip. Thank you, I said and got in the car. She'll be talking about this for weeks, Gregory said as we drove away. Let her, I said. I don't care anymore. And I realized it was true. I didn't care what the neighbors thought. Didn't care about maintaining appearances. Didn't care about being the perfect society wife. I was done performing. Back at my apartment, Gregory helped me unpack. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my living room eating and talking. How does it feel? He asked. Being officially divorced? Strange, I admitted. Like I should feel more different than I do. But mostly I just feel tired. That's normal, Gregory said. You've been through a lot. Give yourself time to process it all. Have you talked to Alexander? I asked. Gregory shook his head. He's not returning my calls. I think he's cut off everyone who supported you. I'm sorry, I said. I know he was your friend. He was, Gregory agreed. But I don't recognize the person he's become. Or maybe I'm just finally seeing who he always was. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into the Sterling Industries project. I met with architects and contractors. I toured the executive floor and took measurements. I created mood boards and sample palettes. The work was absorbing. It required all my attention and creativity. It left no room for dwelling on the divorce or Alexander or everything that had happened. Catherine checked in regularly, offering feedback and approval. Thomas stayed distant, but he approved all my proposals without question. He's impressed with your work, Catherine told me during one of our meetings. He said you have an excellent eye. Thank you, I said. He also said he wishes Alexander had been more like you. Focused, hardworking, honest. Catherine's smile was sad. High praise from Thomas. I also started therapy. Patricia had recommended a therapist who specialized in helping people recover from toxic relationships. Dr. Martinez was in her 40s, with kind eyes and an office full of plants. She didn't push me to talk about things I wasn't ready to discuss. She just listened and asked questions and helped me start to untangle the mess of my emotions. You're grieving, she told me during our third session. Not for Alexander as he really was, but for who you thought he was. For the marriage you believed you had. That grief is real and valid. I feel stupid, I admitted. For not seeing the signs. For believing his lies. People who lie well are good at making you doubt your own perceptions, Dr. Martinez said. That's not your failure. That's their skill. The sessions help. Slowly, gradually, I started to feel more like myself. Started to remember who I'd been before Alexander. Started to imagine who I could become after. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Rachel, who I'd known since college. Trina, who'd been my roommate before I moved in with Alexander. We were worried about you, Rachel said when we met for coffee. You kind of disappeared when you got married. I know, I said. Alexander didn't like you. We figured, Trina said. Classic isolation technique. He wanted you all to himself. It was reassuring to have people who understood. Who'd seen the patterns I'd missed. Who welcomed me back without judgment. 6 weeks after the divorce, I attended the opening of an art gallery with Rachel. It was a small local exhibition, nothing fancy, but the artwork was interesting and the wine was free. That's where I met Julian. He was standing in front of an abstract painting, head tilted, studying it with genuine interest. He wore jeans and a blue button-down rolled up at the sleeves. He had kind eyes and an easy smile. What do you think it means? He asked when he noticed me looking at the same painting. I think it means whatever we need it to mean, I said. He laughed. That's a very diplomatic answer. What do you think it means? I asked. I think the artist was processing grief, he said. See how the colors shift from dark to light? It's a journey from pain to healing. We talked for an hour. About art. About the city. About our lives. Julian was an art curator at a museum across town. He'd been working there for 5 years. He'd never been married. He liked jazz music and foreign films and hiking in the mountains. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. Can I take you to dinner sometime? He asked. Maybe, I said. I'm just getting out of a difficult situation. I need to take things slow. Slow is fine, Julian said. I'm a patient person. He texted me the next day. Just a simple message. It was nice meeting you. Hope you're having a good day. I smiled and texted back. You too. We texted back and forth for a few days. Nothing serious. Just casual conversation. Was nice. Easy. No pressure. Gregory called to check in. How are you doing? Better, I said honestly. I'm working. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm reconnecting with friends. That's great, Gregory said. You sound different. Lighter. I feel different, I admitted. Like I'm finally starting to heal. Any word on Alexander's trial? Gregory asked. It starts next month, I said. Patricia says I might be called as a witness. I'm trying not to think about it. You'll do fine, Gregory said. You've faced worse. The Sterling Industries project was going well. The construction had started. My designs were coming to life. Seeing my vision transform into reality was incredibly satisfying. Thomas actually came to the site one day to see the progress. He walked through the partially finished spaces with his hands in his pockets, nodding occasionally. This is good work, he said finally. Very good work. Thank you, I said. He looked at me directly for the first time. I'm sorry for what my son did to you. You deserved better. Thank you for saying that, I said. Catherine tells me you're moving forward with your life, Thomas continued. Starting over. I admire that. It takes strength. After he left, Catherine smiled at me. That's high praise from Thomas. He doesn't give compliments easily. I gathered that, I said. That evening, Julian called and asked if I wanted to have dinner that weekend. Just dinner, he said. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people enjoying good food and conversation. Okay, I said. That sounds nice. We went to a small Italian restaurant downtown. Julian was easy to talk to. He asked about my design work and actually listened to my answers. He told me about an upcoming exhibition at his museum. Would you like to come to the opening? He asked. It's a collection of contemporary African American artists. Really powerful work. I'd like that, I said. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car. Thank you for taking a chance on dinner, he said. I had a great time. Me too, I admitted. Can we do this again? He asked. Yes, I said. But slowly. I'm still figuring things out. Slowly is perfect, Julian said. He didn't try to kiss me. Didn't push for more. Just smiled and said goodnight. As I drove home, I realized I was smiling too. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Small steps forward. New experiences. New people. New possibilities. The past would always be part of me. The pain of Alexander's betrayal wouldn't disappear overnight. But I was learning to carry it differently. To let it inform me without defining me. I was learning to be Natasha again. Not Alexander's wife. Not the victim of his crimes. Just myself. And that felt like victory. Alexander's criminal trial began on a Monday in October. The courthouse was surrounded by media trucks and reporters. I watched the coverage from my apartment, grateful that I wasn't required to testify on the first day. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating. They outlined Alexander's crimes in detail. The systematic theft of over $300,000, the manipulation of company records, the lies to his family and wife. They promised to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Alexander Sterling was a thief and a fraud. Alexander's defense attorney argued that his client had made mistakes but that the prosecution was exaggerating the severity of those mistakes for political reasons. This is a family dispute that's been blown out of proportion, he claimed. The jury looked skeptical. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution called witness after witness. The company accountant testified about the irregular transfers. Thomas testified about his son's position of trust within the company. Catherine testified about her suspicions and the evidence she'd found. Gregory testified about what he'd witnessed and documented. He looked uncomfortable on the stand, but he told the truth clearly and directly. Simone testified under immunity. She admitted to accepting expensive gifts from Alexander but claimed she hadn't known the money was stolen. The prosecution presented evidence that suggested otherwise. Text messages where Alexander had joked about borrowing from his family, emails where Simone had questioned the source of his wealth. The jury looked less skeptical of her than they had of Alexander's attorney. On the third week of the trial, I was finally called to testify. Patricia had prepared me thoroughly, but my hands still shook as I was sworn in. The prosecutor asked me to describe my marriage to Alexander. I kept my answers factual and unemotional. Did you know about your husband's affair? The prosecutor asked. No, I said. I discovered it after he announced at a dinner with his parents that we were in an open marriage. That was the first I'd heard about any of it. How did that make you feel? The prosecutor asked. Objection, Alexander's attorney said. Relevance. I'll rephrase. the prosecutor said. Mrs. Sterling, did you agree to an open marriage? No, I said. I'd never discussed it with my husband. When he made that announcement, I told him I was single and left. What did you do after that? The prosecutor asked. I described meeting Gregory, receiving the evidence, hiring Patricia, discovering the embezzlement. I kept my voice steady and my answers clear. When Alexander's attorney cross-examined me, he tried to paint me as vindictive. Isn't it true that you filed for divorce out of anger? He asked. I filed for divorce because my husband had been cheating on me and stealing from his family's company, I said calmly. But you were angry, he pressed. Yes, I admitted. I was angry. Anyone would be angry in that situation. Angry enough to exaggerate the extent of his activities? The attorney suggested. I didn't exaggerate anything, I said. I presented evidence. Bank statements. Text messages. Photos. Facts, not emotions. The attorney tried a few more angles, but Patricia had prepared me well. I didn't get flustered. Didn't get defensive. Just answered the questions honestly. After I was dismissed, I left the courthouse through a side entrance to avoid the media. Gregory met me at my car. You did great, he said. You were composed and credible. I just told the truth, I said. That's all you needed to do, he said. The trial continued. The prosecution presented financial experts who explained the embezzlement scheme in detail. They showed how Alexander had systematically stolen from the company over 18 months, creating false expense reports and fictitious consulting fees. The defense tried to argue that Alexander had intended to pay the money back, that it had been a temporary loan, not theft. But the evidence contradicted this claim. There was no record of Alexander attempting to return any of the money. On the final day of testimony, Alexander took the stand in his own defense. It was a risky move, and watching him, I understood why his lawyer had advised against it. Alexander tried to present himself as a victim of circumstance. He claimed the affair with Simone had started innocently. That he'd fallen in love with her and hadn't known how to handle it. That he'd taken the money because he'd been under stress and hadn't been thinking clearly. The prosecution's cross-examination destroyed this narrative. Mr. Sterling, you claim you took this money because you were under stress. Is that correct? Yes, Alexander said. And yet you used this money to gamble. To buy expensive gifts. To support a lavish lifestyle. Does that sound like someone under stress? Or does that sound like someone who believed he was entitled to whatever he wanted? Alexander fumbled for an answer. I made mistakes. You made choices, the prosecutor corrected. Deliberate choices. You created false documents. You forged signatures. You lied to your family and your wife. Those aren't mistakes, Mr. Sterling. Those are crimes. Alexander's face flushed. For a moment, I saw the man from the dinner table. Arrogant. Entitled. Angry at being questioned. I provided for my family, he said. I worked hard for that company. And then you stole from it, the prosecutor said. No further questions. The trial went to the jury on a Friday afternoon. I didn't attend the deliberations. Instead, I went to work on the Sterling Industries project. The construction was almost complete. My designs had transformed the executive floor into a bright, modern space that felt both professional and welcoming. Catherine walked through the finished offices with me that afternoon. This is beautiful, she said. You should be proud. Thank you, I said. Have you thought about what's next for you? Catherine asked. After this project is complete? I've had a few other companies reach out, I admitted, asking if I'd be interested in similar projects. Good, Catherine said. You're talented. You should use that talent. My phone buzzed. Patricia. The jury has reached a verdict, she said. They're reconvening court in an hour. Already? I asked. The jury had only been deliberating for 6 hours. Quick verdicts usually favor the prosecution, Patricia said. The evidence was overwhelming. I'm not surprised. I drove to the courthouse. This time I went inside, sitting in the back row of the courtroom. Gregory found me and sat beside me. Alexander was led in by his lawyer. He looked pale, terrified. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor, the jury foreman said. The clerk took the verdict form and handed it to the judge. She read it silently, her expression neutral. The defendant will rise, the judge said. Alexander stood. His lawyer stood beside him. On the count of embezzlement in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty, the foreman said. Alexander swayed. His lawyer caught his arm. The foreman continued reading. Guilty on 23 counts of embezzlement. Guilty on 15 counts of wire fraud. Guilty on 6 of 8 counts of securities fraud. With each guilty verdict, Alexander seemed to shrink. By the end, he was gripping the table for support. Sentencing will be scheduled for 6 weeks from today, the judge said. The defendant will remain free on bail until that time. Court is adjourned. Alexander turned and looked at me. His eyes were red. His face was twisted with emotion. I looked back at him steadily. Without anger. Without satisfaction. Just looked at the man I'd once loved and felt nothing but a distant kind of pity. Outside the courthouse, Patricia briefed the media. I stood beside her but didn't speak. Justice has been served today, Patricia said. Mr. Sterling betrayed his family, his wife, and his company. The jury saw the evidence and made the right decision. A reporter shouted a question at me. Mrs. Sterling, how do you feel about the verdict? I took the microphone from Patricia. I feel that the truth came out. That's all I ever wanted. That evening, Gregory came over with takeout Chinese food. We ate in my living room and watched the news coverage. Sentencing is in 6 weeks, Gregory said. How much time do you think he'll get? Patricia says probably 10 years minimum, I said. Maybe more. He'll appeal, Gregory predicted. He'll spend years fighting this. That's his choice, I said. I'm done. My part in this is over. My phone rang. Catherine. Thomas and I watched the verdict, she said. It's the right outcome. Alexander needs to face consequences. How is Thomas? I asked. Devastated. Relieved. Both at once. Catherine sighed. He's already talking about how to rebuild the company's reputation. How to move forward. Work is his way of coping. And you? I asked. I'm sad, Catherine admitted. Sad that it came to this. Sad that my son made such terrible choices. But also grateful that the truth came out. That he didn't get away with it. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and thought about everything that had happened. 4 months since that dinner. 4 months of lawyers and courts and revelations. It was finally over. Or at least this chapter was. My phone buzzed with a text from Julian. Saw the news. Want company? No pressure. Just a friend if you need one. I smiled and texted back, that would be nice. He showed up 20 minutes later with ice cream and a willingness to just sit with me. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, he said. I don't want to, I admitted. I want to talk about anything else. So we did. We talked about his upcoming museum exhibition. About my design projects. About a movie he'd seen. About nothing important and everything important. When he left that night, he hugged me briefly. You're stronger than you know, he said. I'm learning that, I replied. The next morning, I woke up to find multiple voicemails on my phone. All from numbers I didn't recognize. All from Alexander. He'd found ways around the restraining order, calling from different phones, leaving desperate messages. Natasha, please. You have to help me. Talk to the judge. Tell them I'm not a bad person. Tell them I made mistakes but I can change. Please. I'll go to prison for 10 years. My life will be over. You can stop this. You can tell them to reduce the charges. Please. I'm begging you. I know I hurt you. I know I did terrible things. But don't let them destroy me. Please. I saved all the messages and forwarded them to Patricia. Her response, another restraining order violation. I'm filing a motion to revoke his bail. He's not allowed to contact you under any circumstances. 2 days later, Alexander's bail was revoked. He was taken into custody to await sentencing. Gregory told me Alexander had called him too, making similar desperate pleas. He's falling apart completely. He tried to blame everyone but himself. Said you'd manipulated the jury. That I'd betrayed him. That his parents had abandoned him. He genuinely doesn't seem to understand that he did this to himself. That's sad, I said. It is, Gregory agreed. But it doesn't change anything. He still has to face what he's done. I felt strangely peaceful. Not happy about Alexander's downfall, but not guilty either. I told the truth. That was all. The rest had been his own doing. 6 months after the dinner table announcement that changed everything, I stood in the completed Sterling Industries executive offices and watched the sunrise through the floor-to-ceiling windows I'd designed into the space. The light filtered through, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. My phone buzzed. A message from a potential client who'd seen my work and wanted to discuss a major hotel redesign. Another opportunity. Another project. Another step forward. I'd officially relaunched my interior design business 2 months earlier. The response had been overwhelming. Apparently, being the wife who exposed her husband's crimes had made me somewhat famous. People wanted to hire the woman who'd stood up for herself. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but I took the jobs anyway. Julian and I had been seeing each other regularly for 3 months now. Nothing serious yet. We took it slow like I'd asked. Coffee dates, museum visits, long walks, conversations that stretched into hours. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give. Never questioned my pace. Just showed up, consistently and kindly. I like you, he told me a few weeks earlier. I like spending time with you. I'm willing to wait for you to be ready for more. And if you're never ready for more, I'll accept that too. That kind of patience felt revolutionary after years with Alexander. My phone rang. Patricia. Alexander's sentencing hearing is tomorrow, she said. Do you want to be there? I thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't need to see that. Whatever happens is between him and the legal system now. Fair enough, Patricia said. I'll go and let you know the outcome. The next day I focused on work. Met with a new client. Reviewed design samples. Made decisions about color palettes and furniture. Patricia called at 3 o'clock. 12 years, she said. He got 12 years in federal prison. With the possibility of parole after 8 if he shows good behavior. 12 years. Alexander would be in his early 40s when he got out. His entire 30s gone. How did he react? I asked. He cried, Patricia said. His lawyer asked for leniency. The judge said the severity of the crimes and the betrayal of family trust warranted a substantial sentence. And his parents? I asked. Catherine was there. Thomas wasn't. She didn't react visibly. Just sat quietly and listened. After we hung up, I sat with the information for a while. 12 years felt like both too much and not enough. Too much for the man I'd once loved. Not enough for the man who'd betrayed everyone who trusted him. But it was done now. Final. Catherine called that evening. I assume you heard about the sentencing. Yes, I said. I'm not sure what I feel, Catherine admitted. Mostly just empty. Alexander is my son. I love him. But I also know he deserved this. It's okay to feel conflicted, I said. How are you? Catherine asked. Really? I'm good, I said and was surprised to realize it was true. I'm working. I'm building a life I actually like. I'm okay. I'm glad, Catherine said. You deserve to be happy. The Sterling Industries project had led to other opportunities. A law firm wanted me to redesign their offices. A tech startup needed help with their new headquarters. A restaurant owner wanted a complete renovation. I hired an assistant, Lisa, a recent design school graduate with excellent taste and boundless energy. Together we started building a small firm. This is amazing, Lisa said one day as we reviewed our project pipeline. 6 major clients in 3 months. That's incredible for a new business. I got lucky with timing, I said. You got lucky with talent, Lisa corrected. These designs are really good. That's why people are hiring us. I reconnected with more old friends. Joined a book club. Started taking a pottery class on Tuesday evenings just because it looked fun. I was building a life that felt genuinely mine. Not a performance for anyone else. Not designed to fit someone else's expectations. Just mine. Gregory and I remained close friends. He'd started dating someone new, a woman named Olivia who worked in marketing. They seemed happy together. I learned something from watching you, Gregory told me over coffee one afternoon. About the importance of honesty. Of standing up for what's right even when it's hard. You changed how I see things. I just told the truth, I said. That's harder than it sounds, Gregory said. Especially when the truth hurts people you care about. But you did it anyway. That takes courage. Julian and I went to the museum exhibition he'd curated. It was powerful and moving, featuring artists who explored themes of identity and resilience. Afterward, we walked through the city talking about the art and life and everything in between. Can I ask you something? Julian said eventually. Of course, I replied. Are you ready for this to be more than casual? He asked. Because I'm falling for you, Natasha. I've been falling for you since the night we met. And I'm okay with waiting longer if you need that. But I also need to know if there's a possibility of more. Eventually, I stopped walking. Looked at him standing there in the streetlight, honest and vulnerable and patient. Yes, I said. There's a possibility. I'm not completely ready yet. But I'm getting there. And I want to get there with you. He smiled. That's all I needed to know. We didn't kiss that night. But he held my hand as we walked back to my car, and that felt like enough. The next morning, I woke up to an email from a magazine that wanted to feature my business in an article about successful women entrepreneurs. They wanted to interview me about rebuilding my career after divorce. I almost declined. The attention still made me uncomfortable. But then I thought about other women who might be in situations like mine, who might need to see that it was possible to start over, to rebuild, to thrive. I agreed to the interview. The reporter came to my office, a bright space downtown that I'd renovated myself. She asked thoughtful questions about my design philosophy, my business goals, my journey. "Do you have any advice for women going through similar situations?" she asked. I thought carefully about my answer. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And don't be afraid to start over. It's scary, but it's also liberating. You're stronger than you think you are. The article came out 2 weeks later. The response was overwhelming. Women reached out to share their own stories. Some asked for design consultations. Others just wanted to say thank you for being honest about the difficulty of rebuilding. Lisa showed me the social media comments. "You're kind of inspirational," she said, grinning. "I'm just a person who survived a bad situation," I said. "That's what makes it inspirational," Lisa replied. Catherine and Thomas hosted a small dinner party to celebrate the completion of the Sterling Industries renovation. They invited me, Gregory, and several board members. I almost didn't go. But I'd worked hard on that project. I deserved to celebrate it. The offices looked beautiful. Everything I'd envisioned had come to life. Clean lines. Natural light. Spaces that felt both professional and welcoming. Thomas pulled me aside during dinner. "You have a gift," he said. "Real talent. I'm proud of the work you did for us. And I'm proud of how you've handled everything this past year. You have more strength than most people I know." Coming from Thomas, who rarely gave compliments, that meant something. "Thank you," I said. "If you ever need anything," Thomas continued, "a reference, a recommendation, anything at all, please let me know. Your family. That hasn't changed." I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected to still be considered part of their family after divorcing their son. But the offer was genuine and kind. "I appreciate that," I said. That night, Julian picked me up from the dinner. We drove to a park and walked under the stars. "How was it?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Strange but good. They're decent people who raised a son who made terrible choices. That's not their fault." "You're very generous," Julian observed. "I'm trying to be," I said. Holding on to anger doesn't help anyone. Alexander made his choices. He's facing the consequences. I need to focus on my own life now. "And how's that going?" Julian asked. "Your life." I thought about my business, my friendships, my apartment. This man walking beside me who made me laugh and made me think and never made me feel like I had to be anyone other than myself. "It's going really well," I said. He smiled. "Good. You deserve that." A few weeks later, I signed the lease on a permanent office space. It was bigger than my previous office, with room for a small team and a proper conference room for client meetings. Lisa helped me design the space. We painted the walls a soft blue. Hung artwork from local artists. Created a workspace that felt creative and professional. "This is perfect," Lisa said when we finished. "This is where we're going to build something amazing." She was right. The business was growing steadily. We had more clients than we could handle. We were making a real impact on the city's design landscape. I was building something. Not just a business but a life. A real life. One that belonged entirely to me. One evening my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery person holding a large package. "Miss Brooks?" he asked, using my maiden name that I'd legally resumed after the divorce. "Yes," I said. "This is for you." Inside the package was a beautiful plant in a blue ceramic pot. The card read, "Congratulations on your new office. Proud of you. Catherine and Thomas." I set the plant on my windowsill and smiled. My phone buzzed. "Julian, dinner tomorrow? There's something I want to talk to you about." I texted back, "Sounds good. What's up?" "I'll tell you tomorrow," he replied. "Nothing bad. Promise." The next evening, we met at the Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. Julian was waiting at our usual table, looking slightly nervous. "What's going on?" I asked as I sat down. "I've been offered a position," he said. "Curator at a major museum in Chicago. It's a huge opportunity. Career-making, really." My stomach dropped. "When would you have to move?" 3 months, he said. Then he took my hand. But I'm not taking it unless you think there might be a future for us. Because I don't want to move halfway across the country and leave behind something that could be really special. I looked at him. At this kind, patient man who'd waited while I healed. Who'd never pushed. Who'd shown up consistently with no guarantee of anything more. I think there might be, I said carefully. But 3 months isn't much time to figure that out. Then let's figure it out together, Julian said. I don't need a guarantee. I just need to know if you want to try. I thought about everything I'd rebuilt. My business. My independence. My sense of self. I thought about the woman who'd walked out of that dinner 6 months ago, terrified and lost. I thought about who I'd become since then. Yes, I said. I want to try. He smiled. That warm, genuine smile that had caught my attention the first night we met. Then that's all that matters, he said. We ordered dinner and talked about possibilities. About what a long-distance relationship might look like if he took the job. About whether I might consider opening a branch of my business in Chicago eventually. About how to build something together without losing ourselves in the process. It felt different from how it had been with Alexander. More honest. More balanced. More like a partnership between equals. I didn't know where it would lead. Couldn't predict the future. But for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. 1 year after the dinner table announcement, I stood in the ballroom of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, surrounded by some of the city's most influential people. The annual charity gala that I'd always avoided when I was married to Alexander was now an event I attended by choice, not obligation. I wore a red dress, the color of confidence and new beginnings. My design firm had sponsored a table, and Lisa sat beside me, taking in the glamour with wide eyes. This is incredible, she whispered. I can't believe we're here. Believe it, I said, smiling. We earned it. The past year had been transformative. My business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd completed 12 major projects. Hired 2 more designers. Won an award for commercial interior design. Built a reputation for creating spaces that were both beautiful and functional. More importantly, I'd built a life I genuinely loved. Therapy had helped me understand the patterns that had made me vulnerable to Alexander's manipulation. I'd learned to trust my instincts. To set boundaries. To know my worth. Julian had taken the Chicago position, and we'd navigated 6 months of long-distance dating. It hadn't been easy. But the distance had given us both space to grow individually while building something together. Last month, he'd accepted a position back in the city, at a newly renovated museum that wanted him to lead their contemporary art department. He was moving back in 2 weeks. We talked about what that meant. About moving forward. About the possibility of a real future together. No rush, he'd said. We have time. Let's just see where it goes. That patience, that respect for my pace had made all the difference. Gregory appeared at our table with his girlfriend Olivia. They'd gotten engaged last month, and Olivia was showing off her ring to anyone who would look. Congratulations again, I told them both. Thank you, Olivia said. Gregory tells me you're responsible for introducing him to the concept of healthy relationships. I don't know about that, I said, laughing. It's true, Gregory insisted. Watching you stand up for yourself taught me what real strength looks like. Changed how I saw everything. Catherine and Thomas arrived at the gala shortly after. They'd become genuine friends over the past year. Catherine served on the board of my company now, offering guidance and connections. Thomas had referred several major clients my way. You look wonderful, Catherine said, hugging me. That dress is perfect. Thank you, I said. You look beautiful too. We didn't talk about Alexander. We hadn't for months. He was serving his sentence at a federal prison 3 states away. Catherine visited him occasionally. Thomas didn't. He's doing well, Catherine had told me last time I'd asked. Working in the prison library. Taking online courses. He says he's trying to better himself. I hoped that was true. Not for my sake but for his. Everyone deserved a chance to change. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Alexander was part of my past. This gala, this life, this future I was building was my present. Halfway through the evening, I excused myself to step outside for some air. The ballroom was hot and crowded and I needed a moment of quiet. I stood on the hotel's terrace looking out at the city lights when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Natasha. I turned. Alexander. My blood went cold. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in prison. What are you doing here? I asked, my hand instinctively reaching for my phone. I'm not, he said quickly. I'm not really here. This isn't me. I'm just in your head. I blinked. Alexander flickered like a mirage, then disappeared. I took a deep breath and laughed at myself. The stress of the evening had created a momentary hallucination. Alexander was in prison. He couldn't hurt me anymore. I turned to go back inside and nearly collided with someone. "Sorry," the person said, stepping back. It was a man I didn't know. Mid-30s. Expensive suit. Nervous smile. "No problem," I said. "Natasha Brooks?" he asked. I tensed. "Yes. I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Michael Preston. I'm Alexander Sterling's lawyer." "I know who you are," I said carefully. "What do you want?" "Alexander asked me to give you something," Michael said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "He's been writing letters. Apologizing. Trying to make amends. He wanted you to have this." I didn't take the envelope. "I don't want his apologies." "I understand," Michael said. "But he asked me to tell you that he's sorry. That he knows he destroyed your life and his own. That he's trying to become a better person." "Good for him," I said. "But his journey is his own. I'm not part of it anymore." Michael nodded. "I'll tell him that. I'm sorry to have bothered you." He left, taking the envelope with him. I stood on the terrace for another moment, processing. Alexander was still trying to reach me, even from prison. Still trying to affect my life. But he couldn't. Not anymore. I'd built walls he couldn't breach. Created a life he had no access to. I went back inside to the gala. Found Julian, who just arrived after finishing late work at the museum. "Hey," he said, kissing my cheek. "Sorry I'm late. How's the evening going?" "Interesting," I said. "I'll tell you about it later." We danced. Talked with friends. Ate elegant food. Raised money for a good cause. At the end of the evening, as we were preparing to leave, I saw someone standing near the entrance. For a split second, I thought it was Alexander again. But it wasn't. It was just a man with similar build and coloring. A stranger who had nothing to do with my past. Julian noticed my reaction. "You okay?" "Yes," I said, and meant it. "I'm fine." In the car on the way home, Julian asked about the envelope. "Alexander's lawyer tried to give me a letter," I explained. "An apology or something." "I didn't take it." "Good for you," Julian said. "You don't owe him anything. Not even acknowledgement." "I know," I said. "It's just strange. A year ago he was my entire world. Now he's just a person I used to know. Someone who made terrible choices. It's like looking back at a different lifetime." "That's because it was a different lifetime," Julian said. "You're a different person now than you were then." He was right. The woman who'd sat at that dinner table a year ago, who'd absorbed Alexander's announcement with stunned silence before finally finding her voice to declare herself single, that woman had been lost. Confused. Uncertain of her own strength. The woman I was now knew her worth. Knew her capabilities. Knew she could build a life on her own terms. Back at my apartment, Julian and I sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, looking at the city lights. "I've been thinking," Julian said. "About us. About the future." "Oh," I said, trying to keep my voice light even though my heart was racing. "I don't want to rush you," he said. "But I also don't want to pretend I don't know what I want. I love you, Natasha. I love who you are and who you're becoming. I love watching you build your business and reclaim your life. I love being part of your journey." "I love you too," I said, the words coming more easily than I'd expected. "I'm not proposing," Julian said quickly. "We've only been together for about 8 months and you've been through enough for a lifetime. But I wanted you to know that I'm all in. When you're ready for more, I'm ready. And if you're never ready for more, I'm okay with that too. Because having you in my life in any capacity is better than not having you at all." I set down my wine glass and took his hand. "I'm not ready for marriage. Maybe not for a long time. Maybe ever. I don't know yet." "That's fair," he said. "But I am ready for more than we have now," I continued. "I'm ready to stop calling this casual. To commit to seeing where this goes. To build something real together." Julian smiled. That's all I wanted to hear. We kissed on that balcony under the stars and it felt like a promise. Not the kind of promise I'd made to Alexander at a wedding altar, full of naive certainty and unexamined expectations. This was a different kind of promise. Cautious but genuine. Based on who we really were, not who we pretended to be. Built on honesty and mutual respect and the understanding that we were both complete people on our own who chose to share our lives. That night, I dreamed about the dinner table. But in the dream, when Alexander made his announcement, I didn't walk out quietly. Instead, I stood up calmly and said, "Then I'm single." And everyone at the table applauded. Catherine and Thomas stood and hugged me. Gregory handed me evidence. Patricia appeared with divorce papers already prepared. And Alexander just sat there, shrinking smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. When I woke up, I was smiling. The next morning, Catherine called. I have news. Alexander is being transferred to a different facility. One with better rehabilitation programs. His lawyer thinks if he completes them successfully, he might be eligible for early release in 6 years instead of 8. How do you feel about that? I asked. Hopeful, Catherine admitted. He's my son. I want him to get better. To become someone who can contribute to society instead of harming it. But I'm also realistic. He has a long way to go. I hope he makes it, I said, and realized I meant it. Not because I forgave him or wanted him in my life, but because everyone deserved a chance at redemption. Even Alexander. Thank you for saying that, Catherine said. You're more generous than he deserves. I'm not being generous for him, I said. I'm being generous for me. Holding on to anger and bitterness doesn't serve me. Moving forward does. Later that day, I met with a potential client who wanted to discuss a massive hotel renovation project. It was the biggest opportunity my firm had ever received, worth more than all our previous projects combined. We've seen your work, the client said. We're impressed. But we need to know you can handle something this scale. We can, I said confidently. Let me show you what we're capable of. I presented our portfolio, explained our process, outlined our vision for their space. By the end of the meeting, they'd agreed to hire us. Lisa hugged me when I told her the news. This is huge. This changes everything. It does, I agreed. We'll need to hire more staff, get a bigger office, maybe open a second location eventually. Chicago? Lisa asked, grinning. Maybe, I said. Let's see how the next year goes. That evening I went to therapy. Dr. Martinez listened as I talked about the gala, the encounter with Alexander's lawyer, the conversation with Julian. How do you feel about all of it? She asked. Good, I said. Really good. A year ago I felt like my life was over. Now I feel like it's just beginning. That's because it is, Dr. Martinez said. You've done the work. You've processed the trauma. You've built new patterns and new beliefs about yourself. You're not just surviving anymore. You're thriving. I am, I agreed. And it feels amazing. On the anniversary of the dinner table announcement, Gregory organized a small celebration. Just him, Olivia, Julian, Lisa, and me. We met at the same Italian restaurant where Julian and I had our first date. A toast, Gregory said, raising his glass. To Natasha, who showed all of us what real courage looks like. Who turned a nightmare into a new beginning. Who proved that the end of one chapter can be the start of something even better. We clinked glasses. I looked around the table at these people who'd supported me, who'd become my chosen family, who'd helped me rebuild. Thank you, I said. For everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have, Olivia said. But we're glad you didn't have to. After dinner, Julian walked me to my car. How does it feel? He asked. 1 year later? Surreal, I admitted. Like it all happened to someone else. But also like it was necessary. Like I needed to go through all of that to become who I am now. I'm glad you did, Julian said. Because who you are now is pretty incredible. I drove home thinking about the journey. About the woman who'd walked out of that dinner, terrified and heartbroken. About all the moments of doubt and pain and struggle that had followed. About how each of those moments had made me stronger. In my apartment, I looked at the photo on my mantle. Not a wedding photo or a picture with Alexander. Those were long gone. Instead, it was a photo from the opening of my design firm. Me cutting the ribbon, Lisa beside me, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. That photo represented everything I'd built. Everything I'd become. Everything I was still becoming. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Saw the news about your hotel contract. Congratulations. Proud of you. Another text from Thomas. Excellent work. You're making a real mark on this city. And finally, one from Julian. Just wanted to say I love you. Sweet dreams. I responded to each message, then set my phone aside and stood at my window looking out at the city lights. 1 year ago, I'd stood in a different place looking at a different future. That future had included Alexander, had been built on lies, had been headed toward disaster. This future was built on truth. On hard work. On genuine relationships. On knowing myself and trusting my strength. I thought about Alexander's letter, the one I'd refused to accept. I wondered what it said. What apologies or explanations or justifications it contained. But it didn't matter. Whatever he'd written, it was for him, not for me. His journey toward redemption or change or whatever he was seeking was his own. Mine was complete. I'd gotten my revenge not through anger or bitterness, but through simply moving forward. Through building a life so full and rich and genuine that Alexander's absence from it was a blessing, not a loss. I'd reclaimed myself, my career, my independence, my future. And I'd discovered something Alexander had never understood, that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was thriving. It was becoming someone stronger and happier and more authentic than you'd ever been before. It was walking away from what hurt you and walking toward what healed you. It was choosing yourself every single day until that choice became natural. Until it became who you were. The woman who'd walked out of that dinner had been terrified. The woman standing at this window was free. And that freedom, that hard-won, carefully built, absolutely earned freedom, was worth more than any apology Alexander could ever offer. I turned away from the window, texted Julian good night, and went to bed with a smile on my face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments of growth. But tonight, on the anniversary of the day my old life ended, I celebrated the life I'd built from its ashes. And it was beautiful.